Good morning, everyone, and my name is Jensen here. Welcome to our special interview series with Mr. Hor Lun. And Mr. Hor himself is an expert when it comes to human capital, HR, and things like organization. So I'll let Mr. Hor introduce himself, and then we can go from there.
Right. I've always been very keen on humans. Of course, they play a part of our life, our family, and of course, work life. I find that my first venture in my working place, I was in operation. I was in the service industry. Every time you see customer, you'll see their idiosyncrasies like, can I better understand customer so that I can relate to them better? There's always been our pursuit of excellence in the hospitality industry. And subsequently, I find that customer is easy to understand. Harder to understand is actually the staff. So I began to journey in work, asked to be transferred to HR, understanding human. I conducted interview. Again, it's very hard to put a pause into this human, 45 minutes, and you can have a lifetime of relationship the next 10, 20 years. So I venture into psychometrics or assessment. So we begin to see that, wow, it's quite amazing that there are tools that are able to quantify the human potentials. Okay, it was amazing. And then I applied this methodology to various segments in my life, my humanitarian work and etc. Try to get the best understanding of human, how humans work, what makes them click. And subsequently, I developed further and further, and we come out with a brand called Inner Assessment. Inner Frequency is all about assessment of humans, okay, as in relation to their course of study, as in relation to the promotion, the organization, whatever. It's about assessing where we are and how far we can go forward. So assessment is something I am very keen, and it's an expert area I've been venturing into.
Great, that was a great introduction, Mr. Hor. Thank you so much for sharing that a little bit about your background. I still remember the first time when I came in touch with you, I was so-called wandering the streets, trying to figure out what was my next step. And of course, to me, there is business, entrepreneurship, and there's potentially going back to employment. But when I first came to you and had a chat, and then you mapped out for me so many dimensions on how to look at me as an individual, as a contributor to society. And then you very quickly pointed out that, I have a specific industry that I should be more suited to, and therefore why I had certain levels of stress in my previous work. So that was pretty interesting. And so coming to today's topic, the word human and capital, right? How would you break it down for a lay person to understand the essence and the meaning of, and even the depth of what human capital means?
Okay. Basically, when we use the word human, it becomes very faceless. It doesn't give you a value. Humans, we are all humans. And then initially, we always like to use the word human resources. Okay, again, it is very transactional. Resources means something that is out there. And as an organization, you find the HR has always been the supporting role. You have a direction, and then you use the resources. You actually use resources. And subsequently, they begin to understand that actually human capital is more interesting because of all capital that you use in an organization, not money, but actually human is of the greatest value. And so they change the word into human capital, right? Something that we have to focus on, something that is going to shape the product, the services, the direction, the goals, and the competitive edge. So human capital is something very beautiful to use. It emphasizes the value. Of course, nowadays, if you're not careful, we're using the word human capital as a lip service. Oh, human capital. But do we really look at it as a serious capital that we need to conserve, we need to build, we need to enhance? Otherwise, human capital becomes just another word, another lip service. Right. So human capital is something we have to relook at because it is enabler in the organization.
Yes, when I think a little bit deeper, the word human capital is not just saying that human is a form of capital. Human is the capital. The evolution of the human, what their potentials are, and how you can take and bring out their potentials, that actually is the capital, right? And so, coming back to today's topic, Mr. Hor, what do you perceive as some of the most pressing human capital challenges that you see in the industry right now, that's happening right now, based on your past 30 to 40 years of observation and experience?
Right. 30 to 40 years back, we don't have Google, So we don't know what's happening. We just have to look at our neighbors, we look at the other states where we are and say, okay, let's compete. But when you go global recently, you begin to see what is happening in China, etc., the advancement, the availability of resources, you can actually pick up. So it's very, very different playing field. It's very, very level. Okay, the beauty is very level. You can tap on any resources, talents, etc., to shape organization. On the other hand, the reality is that you cannot just keep on focusing on what you can do best in the market without understanding whether you have the right capital, human capital, to execute it. So what I find to be interesting in this modern time of availability of knowledge, resources, is that we need to actually, the organization need to contextualize and balance the talent management strategy. Contextualize means where are we, what industry you are in, what are the competitions. Okay, you cannot have the whole world as a competitor, then you have stress. You must know where are you competing. Are you at the state level? Are you at the national level? Are you at the regional level? Otherwise, you overcompete. And when you don't contextualize and balance, if you're over-focused outside, your human capital is going to be stressed. Because every time we keep on changing the goalposts. On the other hand, if you are too inwardly driven, we forget about the rest, we keep on building ourselves, we might actually build on the wrong directions. We will actually become redundant and irrelevant. It happens to Kodak, it happens to Nokia once upon a time. They just can't reinvent themselves because they are out of context of what is happening in the outer world. You might be the best today, but you might be the worst at the end. You might be redundant the next month. So it's about finding the balance. Are we having the talent to match what we want to do going forward?
Right, and I get a sense that from what you're seeing, underlying all this is that we always need to have the balance and the match, but at the same time, perhaps the market is changing so rapidly that maybe your capital is not keeping up enough, or you don't have the right preparation for it, right?
Exactly, that's the key word. You must know whether you have the talent, the capital to match the demand of the market. Otherwise, you have good investment opportunity, but your pocket is empty, your human capital pocket is empty, then you can just dream, you can just be envious, but nothing will work.
Right.
So you need to do both things. If you really want to achieve that target, you have to check whether you need to do an audit, an assessment, whether you have the potential to scale that high, that pace.
So although I'm kind of jumping to kind of the solution to the problem already,
Right.
but what do you see how does this set of issues, the state of affairs,
Right.
how is it going to shape the future of the organizations of the future, and what urgent actions do you think they should take now from a very high level perspective?
Right. At the highest level, as I was saying, is human capital. Okay, and we need to institutionalize the assessment methodology method. We need to say our top drivers, our top assessors, our top enablers in the company are of the highest potential. Otherwise, every time you start moving your truck, you find that, hey, my wheel is not checked. It's a long distance trip. Oh, I don't have the black oil. I don't have, you can't. Once you start moving, you must make sure everything is in top condition. Black oil, the water, okay, the extra tires behind, everything must be there when you start moving. So what we actually need is, in different terms, it means auditing our human capital. Okay, assessing and benchmarking, are we up there to compete at this level? We must first know where we are and where we want to go. And do we have what it takes to be there? So an assessment of human capital benchmarking is necessary. Okay, if you are very, very big organization, or you are very successful, but going forward, if you are not careful of benchmarking, you'll find that you're taking in a lot of new recruits that doesn't match. And before you know it, the whole organization decline. Remember, this is the most important capital that you need to be very vigilant of who you take in to make the composite of your organization.
Right, so you mentioned assessments and
Right.
benchmarking.
Right.
So these are kind of, to me, critical things to possibly install in organizations now.
Right.
But just a quick backtrack to history, like, is this something new or is something that has always been around? And if so, why is it important right now?
It has always been important. That's the reason why we have interviews. We don't just look at the resume and it's just like what you call it, resources. You just call up the university. Hey, I'm looking for 10 guys with CPGA of 3.8, good in outdoor and etc. We still need to have an interview because humans are very dynamic, very complex, a lot of potentials. If they do not match the culture, the job, okay, the task, then you find that it doesn't help the company. So this acknowledgement that human capital is very important has been put in place when they do recruitment or selection. The first entry to the organization. Unfortunately, the minute they take it in, they don't actually build them, reassess them in relation to product change, direction change, performance changes. They don't. They say like, well, I got a good talent. But what about the talent? They're not being tapped further, reshape, upskill. Okay, they don't. So it has been in place, but I felt that there's so much more room for improvement. How to take this assessment, auditing, upskilling to the next level. Okay. Assessment is not one point. It is constantly assessing.
Is what you mentioned something that has been done before, but is it fair to say that it has been in a decline, an era of decline in terms of building up human capital, and now we need to rediscover the importance and the roots of it? Is that the case?
Yes, certainly. Yeah. For smaller companies, they always want to compete with the big boys. The big boys have assessment in place. Unfortunately, they become too goal-oriented. They forget it's still human capital. It has been in place, but again declined. It has not been emphasized. It has not been institutionalized. So these people will start to leave the organization and they say, oh, never mind, anything will do. And then, of course, there's technology. They begin to think technology can replace humans. So say, assessment not important. Why? I have technology, I have automation, I have robotics, I have IoT, and currently is AI. But you cannot dispense with human capital. Why? Without human capital, there's no AI. Everything is preceded by human capital. And for the smaller boys, it's always been interesting to go into assessment. I hope there's a more level playing field whereby everybody will access all their candidates, externally, internally. Externally means those who are joining the company. Internally means when you're doing promotion, when you're doing transfer, when you're doing succession planning, there must also be assessment. You cannot be saying that, well, I got all talents, I can put them anywhere, anytime. No, assessments and talents are very unique. You cannot have an indoor plant outdoor and an outdoor plant indoor. What works for them indoor doesn't mean it works for them outdoor. So similarly, when you look at assessment, you have to be very sharp, unique, and you have to be very discerning. It doesn't mean that the person who is good in study is good at sweeping the floor or doing dancing. We are all specialized in our own way. We are not superhuman or Superman, do everything, everywhere, every time. We have the wrong concept of assessment. It's like, if he is good, he must be good in everything.
Okay, so if let's say I were to take two companies or two businesses, for example, A and B, and they are pretty much in the same industry, doing the same thing. They are fair competitors, and they never had any assessments in place, or they had the conventional ones, okay? Right. And then, so can we make a comparison between company A and B, where A is just the baseline, and B starts having installed these systems, proper systems of assessments and benchmarking, and you run that through 5 to 10 years, exposed to the same industry, having the same talent, what would be the difference 10 years later?
In fact, I had an experience this before, where these two are what we call Forbes 500 companies. No names given, of course. They are side-by-side competitors. The first one, A and B, I was working with A, and again, they don't have assessment methodology. Theirs is the conventional sit down, look at a person, and the interview is like, well, I think the person is good. Of course, the word goods means the qualification, but there's more to human than just qualification. And so when we do a kind of human capital benchmark and realign everybody, it comes with, when we talk about assessment, we always talk about the other twin values, which is compatibility. When we assess, we want to just find the best compatibility. Okay, so assessment and compatibility are two sides of the same coin. So before we came into the picture of assessment, you'll find that the compatibility of people, the managers, to their job is barely 40%. Okay, and we want to move this target up to 60, 80% across 8 to 9 months. And across 6 months, when we move to 60%, you can find that people, the morale are higher. Why? Because a fresh fish is in the fresh water environment, a saltwater fish in the saltwater environment. Their ability to learn is much faster. Their retention are much higher. Their application are more creative. So the dynamics of performance, productivity, and profitability is greatly enhanced. In just less than 6 to 9 months, where they move from 40% compatibility to 60 and then 80, you'll find that the productivity has gone up so much more. Okay, evidently by facts, by data, by the morale. So this is something you can see that if you don't apply human capital and take it for granted, you can see the performance, productivity, profitability will be compromised. It is something measurable. It is actually a chemistry equation. It is very cause and effect. It's not like a second guess because humans are complex. No, there are a lot of science behind assessments.
Right. So if we look, I kind of identified like there are three components here. There's firstly the market. The market drives all the business activities and directions, right? Of course, you have government policy in the place. Then in between there, you've got the market is one thing, the businesses is another entity, and then you've got the individuals, right? Human capital exists at these two levels. So can we look at these two sides? You have human capital as someone who's actually being hired to perform, and you have human capital that's kind of in the pipeline waiting to end up there, right? So there's the nurturing part, right? And then there's the acquiring and putting them in the right place. What do you see are the problems in these pockets that can be improved?
Unfortunately, here in Malaysia, we didn't do assessment at an early age. You know, you find that even in university, which I work very closely with, the public university, I have a program called Accelerated Career Excellence, ACE. I was partnering with Rotary to work with VSM. And to help these final year students find their place in a career world. It's their career dream. Unfortunately, most of them are studying the wrong thing. Okay, that means they're not studying something that they are passionate about, that is in line with their profiles. Okay, example, if they're very logical, of course they can go into science, accounting, mathematics. They cannot be going to arts and vice versa. A person who is not logical enough suddenly go into the sciences, etc. So it becomes a chaotic environment. The talents are being set.
Can I just pause there and just ask, like you mentioned, the logical person cannot go into arts. What does that actually mean?
It means that this person is not good in figures. You know, he prefers the formulas, the aesthetics, and then you cannot quantify aesthetic by numbers. It's like,
you mean the artistic person is not going to be good with the figures?
Yes.
So then he will not be able to perform in his job as well.
Exactly. But while you are in university, the capacity is lower. Meaning to say, even if you are very artistic and then you are put in the wrong place because of fashion, design, because of peer pressure, family, finances, you take on a subject which is very logical, example, accounting, numbers and logics. You find that you can still score and get an honors degree simply because the environment in the university is such that you can defer. Your examination, you can ponder, there's some space, you know. Whereas in the working world, you are 24 hours on your toes. That is where you will collapse. That is where performance, productivity is compromised.
Okay. So I think we are entering this line where this journey, right, so to speak, from being groomed and then entering workforce, is that the definition of a career? What is a career?
A career is when, to me, from the financial aspect, career is equal to income. Income is equal to life. No money, no talk. Everybody needs some income to survive. It's a survival tool. Okay, so career defines how much you have and the quality of your life. But career hinge on the person's ability in relation to his profile. If I'm logical, then I should go into a logical field. Okay, if I'm a person who is more introverted, I should go into a field that allows me to be more introverted. Why? Because I'm most comfortable in that environment. So there are many layers, colors, and shades. So we need to be able to define this career. Then below it is course of study. Because before a career, you need to know what you're studying. And when you talk about study, you're talking about a primary school right to secondary school. The maturity will be more to, in the Malaysian context, Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. They need to assess who they are. You cannot be until Form 6 at university. It's like, what am I going to study? It's way too late. The whole thing will be kind of screw up. Okay, you can't match the market, the nation's development with your human capital talents at the governmental level. So if the government can step in to actually assess who is who, what is what, then they will actually know what is the human capital quality in Malaysia. That is benchmarking at the national level. It's like, okay, my gosh, we have a lot of people in this area. We have less people who are STEM inclined. Why? Because we are scientific, technology, engineering. These are all logic, brain people. Okay, so we need to be able to see whether we have the capital to match our progression upward. If it's not, then what do we do next? Can profile be enhanced? Can it be substituted with technology? We need to know. But without figures, we are always playing a guessing game. Okay, send them to school. It's going to be what do you call that? A broad brush. Okay, everybody should go through STEM, but you can't force it on people to be STEM oriented. Oh, you can't. You can't just say, okay, you study science. It doesn't make sense. The person is not going to be productive. So my concern is that if we do an earlier check and intervention, then we will know exactly how to have better policy, better development plan, better career plan, and finally, how to develop Malaysia. Assessment is important of who we are.
Talking about matching your interests and your profiles to your course of study and then to your job. What's the state of affairs? Because you always hear about the brain drain, and then now you probably hear that there's not enough qualified professionals of a particular sector. Like, what's your sense like? What's happening over there?
Right. I think it all goes back down to we need some professional to do all this assessment. To be able to, just like in Malaysia, you know our population size, but those are quantitative. We want qualitative. Not only the number of guys or girls or the racial composition, but actually to be able to quantify in terms of we have 70% of population who are STEM inclined. Wow. It's very nice to know that you have the type of capital, you have the type of, so to say, you have the type of mineral, so to say. In a country, there are a lot of minerals. You know that, wow, our minerals is worth 1 billion. You can actually quantify it. Currently, we do not know what is the composition of Malaysian students. And without that you cannot plan your trajectory. Your business trajectory, your developmental trajectory is not in place. Okay, I know a lot of countries, example in Singapore, basically the kids will know exactly what to study and they would have known it by Form 3. No issue about that, or science art stream. They basically know where to go and what to study that is in line with who they are. And when they are aligned, you find that learning is so much easier. You don't have to nag, you don't have to push, because that is the natural inclination, needs and want. So they'll jump into it like ducks into water. Very easy. Okay? And that's where you find that the country can grow. Of course, with the support of the government. So if you are able to benchmark our resources, human capital, I think it's going to be amazing. Okay? There's going to be more happiness. There's going to be better retention. And once there's better retention, the organization can grow more effectively. Can you imagine you don't have retention? Every year you have a 60% turnover. Not to mention brain drain to other country, but brain drain within the ecosystem. I jump your company, you jump my company. How are we going to grow? right? So retention has many levels. Internally, are you be able to retain? Externally, within the landscape of a competitor, and externally across the world. So there are two levels of brain drain. One is people study overseas and not in Malaysia because they don't find their talents are being recognized because nobody access them. Okay, so that is one brain drain. The other brain drain is they are already working, they already got the degree, but there's a brain drain out. Okay, of course, it's not a question of assessment. It must be supported by compensation, rewards, and etc. But what I'm saying is that once you're able to access somebody at the educational level, well supported, okay, so they don't leave the country, then you'll find that the potential of human capital is better retained. And once it's better retained, then development is so much easier. So two level, educational retention and assessment, and corporate retention and assessment.
Right.
So there are two levels. Okay, education is one, the other one is career.
Okay. So those who are going through education is kind of forming the supply of good quality human capital,
yes,
all right? And
exactly.
then those people who go into the companies and develop from there, right? They are, the companies are sort of the demand side, right?
Right.
So where do you see today the state of affairs in terms of talent acquisition and retention? Is the situation alarming? Because I'm hearing that maybe the current generations, they tend to switch from job to job quicker. What's your sense on the ground? I'm sure you've got lots of colleagues and people that quietly tell you what's going on in HR right now.
Yeah. Among the HR practitioner, managers, recruiters, we have our own clique, Over coffee, we'll be talking about, of course, our areas of interest. Oh my gosh, the turnover, etc. Now, I just want to tell you that the situation has always been alarming in Malaysia. Okay, of course, we have to benchmark our quality of education against the world. Okay, because it is a good indicator. If our quality of education drops, you find that the quality of the human capital will drop because they're not properly enhanced. Okay, so that is one sector that is beyond us. At the corporate world, they will be the victim. Suddenly, you're building a factory with 160,000 engineers, and you find that, how come you don't have engineers? Malaysia has been very fortunate because we are able to have a multi and diverse human capital who are very fluent in a number of international language. Our FDI conditions are favorable, but when these people park here, their company is like, okay, can you give me 16,000 engineers? Like, I only got 6,000. Then where do you find the 10,000? That was the reason why you find that these big boys, Forbes 500 top companies, Intel, okay, even Feetrox, they start to take initiative to come up with their own university. They cannot afford to wait for the government to produce. Okay, and this company need also to do the same thing. Get those people, access them before you give them a scholarship to study whatever they need to fill in the gap of not enough engineers of whatever kinds. So that is very, very important. Okay, so you won't be surprised to see the government has been encouraging all these big boys to have their own, college university. There's one for logistics now. There's one for engineering. There are so many. Okay, even for aviation. They do not want to wait really. I start my own aviation technology company. I start my own logistics college. Why? You can't. The gap is there. It doesn't match. The education doesn't match the industrial needs. Why? Because industrial is moving so fast. Simply because Malaysia is a net exporter country. And when they produce, they need a lot of talent. They need a lot of automation. Okay, and our population size is very small. So if you don't have the quality, you are dead. Okay, so many organizations are very happy to see that they are creating their own universities. Okay, offering college, certificate, diploma, as well as full degree. Okay, and so these people have to bypass all the public, private university. They just join there, they work part-time, they study part-time under the same organization. Okay, and the organization, of course, is very happy. Why? Because it is a retention program. It's a traction program. So they're able to kill 2 to 3 birds at one go. And because they group them at a very young age, they couldn't fit in the outside world, and they access and they fit into the interworld, they become retained whole life through.
Okay, so I'm seeing like, okay, that means you have the talent grooming and nurturing,
Right.
and then that makes talent acquisition much easier,
Right.
and therefore you support it further, it becomes talent retention.
Yes,
Right.
yes. The first basis must always be assessment, okay, before the development. Otherwise, you try to develop a duck to be able to survive, to perform on land when they're supposed to be perform in the water. So assessment be uh, must be it's not something that you can bypass, overlook. No, it must be something that you have to put in place to know the chemistry, physics, and biology of the person. What is best for this person? Okay, and from there you start developing, and from there it becomes integrated into your retention. It is already there. Okay, and the best part is when you do this at a very young age, for certain reason, you find that their loyalty is higher. Retention is already no issue because they owe their life to you. They start from there and they grow from there. Okay, so they are locked into the ecosystem of the company. Unlike you recruit somebody from university, you have a cultural misfit. Whereas at this age, when they're young, the cultural fit is already being integrated.
Right.
So that is amazing.
So that is where I guess you are, advocating that we move towards too. But while in the meantime, as of now, I'm hearing that people are seeing differences in the different generations that's upcoming. I'm from the millennial generation. After me, it's I think the Gen Ys and then the Gen Alpha. So that's a trend that I think many businesses and employees are watching out for to better prepare and cater to their needs. At the same time, you've got the behind us the AI theme pounding. So if I'm a business owner today, I would be very watchful about what's going on here in order to prepare, because it's moving really rapidly.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Can you tell and say, based on your insight, how do you look at differences in the generation? Can you sort of profile them so that employers and businesses can think how to better utilize their strengths?
Okay. Now, these generational dynamics or generational gaps or whatever you call it is a reality. And basically, they are shaped by major events in their 20 years age. For example, in the last 2-3 years, we have COVID, and there are a lot of these major events, and then we have geopolitics. You find that when they have another 15 years, they are shaped by this type of mentalities event. That's how we have generation X, Y, Z. It's a 20 years gap for each, the baby boomer. Okay, so it's very much linked to the economic, geopolitics, technological advancement of that era. Now, after looking at that, before we have this anxiety of how to relate to this reality of generational people, is one thing you have to again do: assessment. The company have to do not so much as assessment of people, but assess whether what type of generational people they need to run the organization, because each one will have his own profiles. Okay, so it's not a question of again, the reality is that there are always composition. There are people in their age 60, there are people in the age 40. There's always a composite. So what they do is that they do a human capital benchmarking. Okay, by age group, what is my topography in my company? Okay, are there more old people? What about 40s? What is the ratio like? You need to have a feel of that. Then only you know how to manage. My God, our company are people of elderly age. That's what country have to deal with, an elderly population. Similarly, we have to before we get before we act upon it, we just have to get an assessment. My company, again contextualizing and balancing, is that how many people are in this generation? How many people in the next generation? Step one, assessment. Step two is that you have to look at key area. If you're into design, get the younger generation. If you are in a very established area where you need pillars to hold on to, back room, then you get the older generation. So again, it's the same thing. Assessment, magic. It's the same principle. Okay? And the third thing you have to be aware of is that it's always a composite. There's no such thing as one generation, one department. There's always a composite. Okay? When we begin to look at people in that composite area, then we have less worry, because now we have a team. We have a team psychology. It's not about, oh, you generation alpha will dominate the department. No, it's always been collective in an organization. So we are able to moderate the domination of any particular generation to a specific function. Much as we want to leverage it, we are also able to moderate it. So there is always been contextualized.
Where does I mean, we're talking about the changing generation. That's something out of our control, and we try to use the human capital, so to speak.
Yes.
How should businesses look at, and what can you see businesses changing and preparing for in the future? Like, would they have different HR structures, different HR policies, different departments, different incentives? What's your sense on that?
I think one of the most interesting area you see about this generational issue, and in relation to the industrial revolution. Once upon a time, everything, like example, I was a banker before. Those days, banker would just sit in the big, wide organization, neat, tidy, technologized, and customer wants anything, we have to knock on our door, queue up, please. Subsequently, we find that when the competition becomes very strong, we have to actually go and look for customer. Customer no longer wants to work, to come and see you. Customer will actually dictate, I'm very busy, can you come and see me and propose to me on Sunday afternoon? We have no choice but to adapt. Fortunately, at that point in time, there are a lot of generation who do not want to be in the office. Well, if it's them, okay, there's no fixed hour, there's a lot of interaction, there's a lot of mobility, there's a lot of commission for marketing. So now we divide the marketing into two types. Existing markets and new market. New market is for this generation who likes mobility, who likes interaction. The older markets who prefer to stay in and nurture will be another one. So similarly, when we go forward, we will be able to see matching of these human talents to the environment. Why? Because any environmental change in the world is actually started by humans. So it's going to be a loop. It's not something like, oh, we can't cope. It's not like a disaster, It's something that you can manage because who create that change? Human capital. Okay? By this generation, they create it. But it is not something static. There are still a lot of legacy issues, which of course will be taken by the other generation as they move forward. At a certain point, the technology has expired, and these humans have expired, they have left the organization, and then they move on. So there's always a composite change as it moves, okay, in tandem with the environment created by human in both sides. So we don't have to worry about the conflict. The question now is about contextualizing and balancing. If you have too much this alpha generation, the organization is going to go crazy. Unless they are entrepreneur startup, fine. Okay, but if they are employer-based, employee-based, then you need to find a balance. Okay, so I guess in a big company, there's enough, so to say, there's enough cake for everyone to share. Now the question now is who is doing what and who is eating what.
Right, and I think you've really touched on so much depth in this short time that we have, talking about HR, the importance of it, the state of affairs, what's coming, and as a business owner, where should you place your focus on at least? Now, you touched heavily on assessments and benchmarkings, and for someone who doesn't really know what is it at all, are you able to give like a 101 very quick intro on assessments, the different types, and what are the things you do? If there are superior ones, where do different assessments fall in their own category?
Right. Basically, I want to just use the word assessment is not a rocket science terminology. We always do assessment since we are young. You look at a child assessing, is this food I like? Is this food too spicy for me? As we become adult, we assess the quality of our clothes, our diet, our friends, our partners, our jobs, our area of study. Even when we are going out, we will use software to access what is the easiest way to bypass what are the options. So assessment is something we do all our life. Simply because assessment means knowing our options and choose the best option that give us the best yield. That is the simple meaning of assessment.
It's the reason why we go and see a doctor in the first place.
Yeah.
They're kind of assessing where you're at.
Not only that, even before we see a doctor, we'll be checking with people which doctor. Is this doctor better? Is that doctor better? I mean, they are all pediatrician, but you still need to assess. Okay, this doctor, oh, this is expensive, that is expensive. So there is a assessment is not about human only. It's about budget, capacity, capability. There are many, but it is all under the umbrella of assessment. Something that we have been doing all our life now extended to the corporate world. If you are going to the market, your spouse going to the market to buy vegetable, do you be assessing before they buy? Wow, this price. Wow, they look fresh. Wow. They'll be looking not only to the vegetable, but also to the vendor. Oh, this person is pretty startup. I won't buy from him. If everything being equal, I'll go somewhere. So assessment has been a daily exercising of this quality every day.
And I would add to that, finally, after doing that, it leads to making a key decision. And of course, when you buy groceries, it's fine to try here and there, but when it comes to your career, which course of study, which company to join, which employee to hire,
Right.
what to do with them, each one are strategic decisions that you want them to succeed more than to fail, right? It's critical decisions.
I like the word you use is strategic because it's long term. It's an expensive investment. Do you know the most expensive thing in an organization is human? Why? Every year you have to give increment. After that you have to give bonus. And it keeps going up. You cannot decrease the increment. So you cannot afford not to access. Okay, so in a corporate organization, assessment comes in 3 levels. The first one is to make sure that who comes in must be of best quality, compatible to our pace, our direction, our product, our services. That's the first one. So you talk about recruitment. It can also be internship. Okay, so after they come in, you do the necessary training. Okay, the next assessment will be assessing those internal. Okay, most of us say, we don't have to, as I was mentioning. The assessment internally, if you want to transfer somebody else, you have to make sure it fits to the new function. It was when they first came in, but because of the dynamic of change, it is not now. So assessment is not only horizontal, it's vertical. Okay, like your motorbike, some of us are 1002cc, 1005. If you are using a 800cc, you cannot go uphill. For some people, their max is this level. They cannot go further. You cannot say, well, you've been so old, you're such a senior, I'll promote you to manager. They just can't. So it's a vertical assessment. So in terms of promotion, in terms of transfer, you have to make a check. Third one is that, the second one also includes very high level succession planning and continuity of the organization. It's very important to access. Okay, it's not a question of right time, right place, I'm the most senior, I am entitled. There's no entitlement issue. It's always been compatibility. Do you have what it takes to do the job? If it is a meritocracy, you get it done. Okay, the meritocracy is not your past record, but your compatibility in terms of competency, capacity, and capability. And the last one is that given the economic scenario and the trends, when you do merger acquisition, it's the same. We have to do assessment. We call it human capital due diligence. Okay, we always do due diligence about property, assets, association, vendors, etc. But we don't do the most important, the human capital. So the third one is when you do merger, acquisition, partnership, collaboration, do we have the right fit? Okay, that is important. So assessment cut across the entire organization. Why? Because an entire organization is defined by its human capital.
So when you say that we don't do enough assessments at the human capital level, specifically referring to the human as humans, right, and the potential, is it because that we do not know how to do it or we choose not to do it?
To them, humans are always seen as like, I can do anything, I got 2 hands, 2 legs, we are all the same. We are all the same on the outside physically, but internally, we are different.
Okay.
We are not monotone, everything is the same. No, we are very diverse. Example, some of us are more logical, some of us less. Some of us prefer to be with people, some of us prefer to be with things, ideas, sparks. Okay, some of us prefer to be in nature, some of us prefer to be in technology. So the diversity and the combination is huge. So once you put a person in the wrong environment, you will definitely be assured performance, productivity is going to be compromised. So assessment is an art of respecting the individual for who or she is.
And is it because the industry doesn't have the right tools on how to assess people holistically that they are using very transactional way of looking like just a resource? Is it because they lack certain understanding? Is that state of the art, so to speak? Has it been established in HR practices?
Right. First of all, for the smaller company, they find it's too expensive, so cost is a factor.
So that means there is already ways that you can understand a person through an assessment that goes really deep. There are ways to do that.
Yes. Okay. The technology is there. You can really go very, very, very deep. In fact, I have been doing this for a very, very senior level at CEO level. Headhunting is no longer about all your track record in the past. It's about what you can do going forward. Assessment is not about past, oh, I got 5 A's. Oh my God, you have a double degree. Oh my God, you have 3 PhD. Those are past tense. Those are not future. Okay, assessment is about future. What else can you do going forward? Okay, so to some people, it's a cost factor for a smaller company, but the technology is such that it can be very cost effective doing it. Okay, so the cost is already taken out of the picture. It can be done. Okay, for bigger companies, if your turnover is in hundreds of millions, what is 1,000 assessing your top talents? Or what is 5,000 assessing the top? You can't. It's affordable. It's really affordable. Number two, and they always look at human and they take it for granted lah. Humans can adapt one lah. They can evolve.
Yeah, because they've also signed a contract. Even if you don't do anything, they will still stick with you.
Exactly, but now it's different. Now the turnover is very fast because of generational issue. If they don't like you, you don't have to. You don't have to fire them. They fire you. You say, come on, I'll change. So currently in Malaysia and many parts of the world, they find that ability to retain is very difficult. And once it's very difficult, you'll find that it's very hard for them to move forward. They cannot build on their competencies. There's always leakage here, there, talents. There's a lot of pinching. Everybody is pinching talents from across, and you compromise the whole ecosystem. So my suggestion is that the technology is in place. It can be very cost effective. Why don't we institutionalize it? Okay, so that we are better able to grow our talents, to enhance our talents, and to reap the contribution from our talents.
So after all this, what does an assessment look like? I mean, what do I sit down and answer some questions on the computer? I take some forms, or I go through an interview? What does an assessment actually look like?
There are many forms of assessments. We can actually assess somebody purely by looking at a person, what we call assessment by observable behavior. We are actually open diary. Whatever we do is being shaped by our operating system, the internal frequency. You can't say that I am doing something. No. Whatever you do, whatever you say, whatever you think, whatever you perceive, whatever opinions you have is a product of your inner frequency. So if you are very sharp, whatever the person say, do, choose, you can actually know the person's profile. Okay, that is something very easy to do. Of course, assessment can be done electronically. You can actually ask key questions. That's one. Assessment can also be validated through an interview, because when it comes to electronic, a lot of people are very savvy. They will try to do something to bypass the electronic assessments.
Choose the answers that will get them to a better score, to get them to the result they want.
Yes, and to the job they want. I've seen people beating the system. It's really not something difficult. Okay, the best I felt is always been the interview. Okay, whereby you are able to assess people directly by how they speak, the body language, their uncontrolled parasympathetic system, whereby it's an unconscious behavior. You just can't hide it. If you're able to read into it, you can assess a person. And of course, there are many other assessment, example, intuitive assessment, which are more advanced. You can actually tap into direct behavioral personality of the persons, okay? So there are various types, and we are using various types to actually get to know a person. Those days in the East, people read your handwriting. It's an assessment. Okay, your signature will tell a lot about you.
Yes.
Okay, and then the face, the physiognomy will actually be an assessment methodology. So assessment doesn't have to be something. They are all scientific in its own rights. Okay, except that people are not aware of that. I'm not talking about fortune teller looking at the fingers and the hand. Those are changeable. But I'm talking about face that don't change overnight. Okay, I'm not talking about face that goes through plastic surgery. You want to have a sharp nose. No. I'm talking about your natural self. There is a lot to be read into. Okay, so I find that assessment is something people don't talk about. I was just in educational fair. The educational people will tell you this is good to study. It's a lot of pricing competition. Okay, there's a lot of product push. There's no honoring, respecting, understanding profiles. It's all about budgeting. It's all about cost. It's all about giving freebies. Oh, come on, you join here. You get to travel. This is prestigious. This is branded. What about the human factor? It's just not in the picture. Similarly, for corporation getting people, it's like, hey, join us, join us. But what about feet? Because feet itself, ironically, is the best retention. But that is not being even emphasized. You try to get a big fish with a good bait, but the bait itself is an assessment. If you want this type of fish, you get this type of bait. Okay, and when you get the fish, this is how you feed it to grow it. But that logic is absent currently. I don't know. I personally felt it's because people are very expedient. It's like, come on, get it done, get the two hands, two legs. Okay, and the peer pressure of the rat race, my degree, my CPGA, my exposure. But they find that all these are just your dressing, just like your shirt doesn't define you. Your spectacle doesn't define you. You're defined by something inner. So that has been conveniently
I can just imagine if today we go to clinics and the state of affairs is that we don't have enough doctors. So you're visiting someone who isn't, as qualified, but you visit whoever you get, okay?
Yeah.
I can only imagine that you have higher chance of misdiagnosis, misprescribing. So what you're saying over here is that the assessment as a starting point is a very logical, important step. There's not enough installed in places. Yeah. So here the question is, if it's important to be there, how difficult is it to implement an assessment system, a process? Is there a methodology? Amongst methodologies, are there the most pragmatic ones to use? Should they go full-fledged? What's the cost like? Can you give a very quick overview on that?
As I was saying, if you begin to see the importance of getting a person with the right competency, the right capability, and the right capacity, the right culture, and the right competitive edge, you begin to find that the technology is in place and it can never be more expensive than losing your competitive edge. So all these are already in place. Of course, there are assessment pertaining to personality, there are assessment pertaining to skills. So there are many layers of assessments. But most of us are good at the skill level, but forgetting that all these skills comes back to the person himself. Some people are more inclined towards this type of skills. Some people are more inclined towards this type of skills. So the other assessment must finally be grounded on this foundation assessment, the personality profile. And they are all in place. The software are all in place. You can have free version from some of these sites, You just have to validate it by professional assessor during interview. And it can be done. Okay, that 45 minutes will mean the 4 or 5 years or maybe 40 years of contribution for India. So in terms of cost, opportunity, risk and opportunity rating, I think it's something that is affordable. Technologically, it is there. It is something that has to be incorporated into an organization.
So it's imperative, it's urgent, it's important, it doesn't cost much, it's logical. So as much as possible, you should have the right assessments done at the right places, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I know I met you and then we explored the topic of human capital, but I also know that you're developing a framework, so-called a unified framework about understanding profiles better, higher levels of accuracy, quicker, and you call it inner frequency. Can you share a little bit about the components of inner frequency, why it's unique?
Right. I find that inner frequency, I've been into this journey of assessment, looking at methodology, looking at the paradigm, looking at two big areas, the East and the West. The West methodology of assessment has its own uniqueness, but the East has always been having assessment for thousands of years. Okay, and I find that there's no conflict whatsoever. In fact, it's a good factor to triangulate. What you see on the surface, what you see on certain behavior, you may not be able to account for it unless you see other things that has not been factored into the chemistry. So I have in inner frequency come up with a whole set of of assessment entirely on human profiles, character, and it ranged from DISC to many other psychological tests. For example, like your retention ability, your spatial skills, your logical skills. Some of us are lower at the logical area. Some of us get lost very easily because of spatial skill are not in place. So I have come across a lot of clients. They were very surprised I'm able to anticipate their retention level as being low. And what can you do in the process? And of course, I also added in other assessment in the East. Okay, of course, I'm in the process of studying some of these things like signature, physiognomy. And of course, I like the Chinese way of looking at human, we call it elements. The Chinese have these elements. In fact, we are made up of elements. Everything around us are made up of elements. And elements, as we all know, as a science, it has its own properties. And because they are things, we call them properties. But if they are part of human, it becomes personality. So properties and personality are the same thing in different contexts. Okay, and so if you happen to be a person who is a fire element, you find that you are very fiery, okay, very passionate, very enthusiastic, always very emotional. Whereas if you're a person who is perhaps earth element, you're always very contemplative. Why you don't move so fast? You're more retrospective. You're more introspective. So elements actually defines who we are, and it also has the same value in terms of the job match, in terms of cultural match. Example, if you happen to be in advertising, it's all about new trends, new ways, creativity. Then if you choose a fire element, that will be wonderful. If you happen to choose the earth element, the person is going to be very anxious, is going to be very slow in adapting. So this element is a crucial role. So in my inner frequency, I got many ways to validate, triangulate, get a sharper perspective of the best fit in a person.
And does that apply to, say, things like, because it's really about profiles, right? Does it apply to choosing the right course of study? Maybe if I'm even a kid, choosing the right activity to learn, going to the right job, the right industry, the job role. How useful is inner frequency?
To me, the usefulness starts at a very young age of 3 to 4. Why? Because most parents, when they're busy, they send to the same old, school, preschool, and they have the same old activities. Whereas if you begin to know that your child is more kinesthetic, then you want to have a lot more activities that relates to touching, sensing. If a child is very visual, you might want something more visual for his activities. Why? Because now you are supporting, enhancing, developing the particular profile. Okay? If you give him something that doesn't fit him, you find that he's always in a sense of disconnectedness, dissonance, a lot of stress. Why? Because you don't understand me. I want to touch, but you say don't touch. I want to see, but you say don't see, touch. So there's a lot of these wrong signals and message going across. So assessment starts with a very young age. What is their frequency? What is their resonance? What vibrates for them? And it's not going to be inherited from parents. So I do assessment for kids. You find that you are better able to relate to them. The parents might be very conservative, very quiet. You suddenly have a child who is talkative all the time. But we tend to impose our values and say, hey, keep quiet. So there's a lot of cultural restriction. But the minute we understand, it's very liberating. We begin to celebrate the child's unique potentials.
Yeah, because we do that as parents, we tend to impose which educational route to go to, which school to go to, in our best intentions, right?
Of course.
Which job you should take for your survival, who you should marry.
Yeah. Exactly. So you find that once we begin to shift towards this paradigm of looking at every individual as unique, then we have a lot more to celebrate in life. We begin to see the diversity, what we call in the corporate world the DEI. We celebrate diversity, we celebrate equitability. That means you have a right place in the sun with all of us. And then there's so much more inclusion. So it doesn't contradict corporate values. It's just that we are making it more refined, more accessible. Okay, so we started at children age, then later on which school to go, what culture to go, what language, what are they best fitted for, and it's a continuous assessment throughout our life. Even after you retire, you must say, what am I going to do with my life? Assessments comes in.
So we use assessment like kind of helping us make future decisions.
Yeah.
But it can also work like an intervention when things are not going well.
Right.
There's a misfit that you can sense.
Yes.
Then perhaps you can take that opportunity to assess yourself and then see where to go. Is that right?
Exactly, yeah. This is what you call the proactive method. Okay, not reactive. When they hit the wall, it's like, why am I hitting the wall? Oh, come on, let's check. Oh, you should have gone this direction. So they are both methods. One is reactive. When you hit something, when you have dissonance, when you are stressed, when you have quarrel, when you have miscommunication, when you have gaps, then you look at it. So that is reactive. Most of us are on the reactive modes.
Including businesses as well.
Yes, exactly. You know, and why my staff is not in sync with what they're saying? Of course, their pace is lower. Okay, their machinery is 1,000 cc. You are expecting 1,006. Just because you're paying 1,006, you expect the person to be 1,006 cc. It doesn't work that way.
Like you said, everybody is different.
Everybody is different.
So if I were to pose you a really on-the-spot challenge here today, okay, you are a CEO, okay, you've got employees running a successful business. So one day, you've got someone who's not performing. You know, since day one, he has always not been performing, and you've got someone who is a top performer, and you see, like, in the traditional sense, you are a good employee, you're a bad employee.
Right.
If you were someone who looked with a lens of an assessor, inner frequency, how would you look? What would you do?
Basically, there's no bad guys, poor guys. They are just wrongly placed. Just like a plant. You love the plant, say, oh my God, this plant will look beautiful in my office. But you didn't ask the plant, are you indoor or outdoor? Okay, it's an outdoor plant, but because you like it so much, you put indoor beside your desk under aircon with no lights. And then it died. You say, oh my God, okay, the fellow cheated me, this plant cannot survive. No, it's just a misfit. So to me, they're no good or bad person. Even if the CEO got 4%, I will tell the person, I've done it many times before, the right candidates, I'll say, you better not apply because you don't have the capacity. When you go up there, you got more stress. It's just not worth the pay, the position. And most of them will say, certainly, I think I better quit. Why? Because it's just not worth it. You're not designed, you don't have the configuration to match the demand in the next level. You have already plateau in the right sense of the word, not the negative plateau, because that is your max. All of us have limitation. Elements have limitation. Chairs have limitation. Bars have limitation. Right? When you push beyond the limitation, the whole thing crumbles. So when I do counseling with all these people who are applying for a job, I say, you better not take it. It's going to be stressful. Okay, your family life, your personal life is going to be in a mess. Why not you find something you really enjoy? Because when you enjoy the right fit, you will definitely progress and excel.
I think I really like the way you view it in this way, because the first viewpoint that I gave, I'm the boss, I like the top performer, I'm not very happy with the poor performer, and then I actually maybe look down to some extent because I'm thinking from the viewpoint of my company. But if you're thinking from the viewpoint of human capital, then you want to find where they are best fit at.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You do not want to waste the capital. Okay. Even 1 cent or 10 cents, if you know how to grow it, it can be 1,000. Right? So to me, when you look at a person, there's no such thing as poor performer. It's only the wrong context. If you want to be a CEO, of course, that person may not be the best CEO, but he's the best logistic expert. Okay, and the best logistic expert can cripple the whole company if you got the wrong guy there. So it is not isolated. It's always been contextualized. It's always been a team. There's no such thing as the best CEO, the whole company will work. It won't. Even the best CEO have to use assessment to get the right person at the right place to get the company producing. So when I see a person who is unhappy, I will tell the person, it's just a misfit. Let's get you to somewhere else you can perform naturally better.
Well, if I'm that person, I would definitely feel very reassured. Like there's something else for me, there's a better place for me.
This world is big enough for everything that you can possibly be. There's no such thing as you're a poor performer. It's always been misfit, mismatch. So once you begin to know that, it's very comforting. It has always been for me. Okay, get the right person at the right place, the person will naturally be a performer.
Very well. I think, Mr. Hor, we had covered so much good stuff here. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, the interview. Would you have any final parting words to say, someone who's in a company, who's a business owner, who is watching this, what important things should they take away or maybe even do moving forward?
Right. if the CEO is watching this or somebody at the level of decision making, I seriously would ask them to do what I always felt is my favorite quotation, know thyself. That person have to know himself, okay, his whole range of strength and his possible limitation, and whether he's at the best fit in the position. Once he's able to see that, there is a buy-in, then only he can implement it in his organization. Otherwise, it's always been rhetoric. It's like, really? Okay, so I would advise these top people to actually leverage this very powerful organizational tool. They always look at robots, machine, but they forget assessment is a tool that can leverage human capital to the next level. Okay, so I would invite them to have a visit, sit down and have a talk to able to quantify your personal human capital, and from there, those close buddies of yours, those key men in the organization, and then cascade down slowly. Okay, so that is my advice, and welcome to the world of assessments. So anything else you would like to?
What about, say, maybe can you say a few words for, say, a parent, maybe someone who is about to embark on a career path, important decision, which study course, which company to go to?
Yeah, sure. Basically, currently, because it's half yearly in Malaysia, a lot of these students would have graduated from their secondary. I got a list of people coming to me. It's like, I don't know what my daughter wants to study. The children do not know. The parents neither know. Why? Because we have an age whereby we have so many choices. The more choices of it, ironically, it gets worse. We don't know how to choose. So I've already helped many of them to choose what they would have excelled in. Okay, so the parents are happy, the individuals are happy. Okay, and because I'm a third party, I don't have interest in the organization. I can commission if you study from this university. So my assessment will be more objective. So I help parents to help the children to identify because what they study is going to be what they're going to be working for in the next 30 to 40 years. So it's a very crucial crossroads that they have to meet with an assessor. Okay, and of course we can also fit in the budgeting issue, cultural, mobility, but first one is what are you best fitted for? What would be the best match for you? So I do that for parents, and I'm happy to say I don't have a client who walk away without grinning all over. Why? Because it's such a heavy burden to be a parent, and you find that you cannot help the child to choose his or her direction. A long journey forward in their life, and it is equivalent to happiness. Okay, so assessment is equal to many things. Okay, and I'm glad that if you happen to be parents, it's the same. If you're CEO, you happen to be parents to many other people in your organization. So to me, things are pretty generic. Okay, you're a parent at home, you're a parent in an organization, you're a parent to people that you are training, and all of them need assessments. Okay, so once again, before we wrap up, I'd like to thank you for your inquiry into this very important area in our life. The more choices we have, the more we need to look deeper into who we are, so that our choices amidst the hundreds and thousands, we have the best one that will give us the best self-esteem, our best usage of our internal compatibility, our strength, our motivations are all there.
Yeah, so if we can all do the things that we like and we can grow from there, it's really the best.
Of course, if every day you wake up, there's no Monday blues, I think why not? We are definitely going to be more happier, we are definitely going to be more motivated, we are definitely going to be more, fulfilling in our job and excel. So it's very, very natural.
Excellent.
Okay?
Thanks so much for watching, and I hope we'll be able to bring more episodes like this to you in the future. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.